Okay. Good evening. My name is Odie Hawkins. It's Tuesday evening, and we're doing what we do on Tuesday, which is to present a moment in time to you.
Mm-hmm.
And just before we start rolling, we were talking about a very interesting thing, I think. It concerned what it is that we eat and what it is that we want to eat and so forth and so on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a strict vegetarian. There are moments in my life when I had nothing but veggies to eat, and I really enjoyed it. There were moments in my life when I've had nothing but grits, and I enjoyed them too. I don't know if this is a Zola. You tell me what you think.
Yes.
I don't know if this has something to do with the process of aging,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm beginning to somehow enjoy the taste of fruit more with things like chicken and fish. I mean, for example, the other day, we had stir-fried chicken nuggets in flax meal, watermelon slices, very little tiny watermelons, the little midget watermelons that have such a sweet center, and cantaloupe.
Mm-hmm.
I put the cantaloupe in slices, little chopstick size slices.
Oh, and you also had the plum cots.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever that is. I mean, and we stirred it around, and the idea was not to cook the melons, the cantaloupe, or the watermelon to death, but just to sort of have it season the chicken, and it came out pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, from time to time, when we've done these things, of course, people, let's say Mediterranean people, have used dates and stuff like that in dishes. I think I remember having something out of a Syrian restaurant where they had dates and goat dates and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But that was part of that particular culture.
Mm-hmm.
Here, I doubt very much if you'd find somebody with watermelon and cantaloupe in a chicken dish. But we had it, and
it was delicious.
I don't know, I feel better for it.
It was delicious, but then
It was light and didn't have that bloated effect that you might get from some things.
But it also goes back to growing up. We were not exposed to all that fruit necessarily. Summertime, maybe the watermelon, whatever, but you weren't exposed to cantaloupe and certainly not plum cots because they're just new, plum and the apricot. And the meals we ate mainly were set, like the chicken, peas, the dinner rolls, the rice, and there was not a lot of imagination.
Yeah, right.
And the food that was on
in my case, since I always make it very plain by saying I was very poor, and I can remember eating beans more often, not beans and rice, just beans. And years later, talking with people who had voluntarily raised themselves on veggies and on things like beans and peas and lentils and so forth. All I could say to them was, "Hey, I beat you to it. I was there first." We had that pot of greens with one neck bone in it, or two neck bones, whatever was supposed to give it flavor. And fortunately, I think we benefited from it. First of all, it kept you from eating too much, because there was too much to eat. And then, of course, later, I can think of friends of mine who had that same sort of privation happening in their lives, and they grew big and fat.
Yeah.
Because the minute they had the opportunity to eat some food that was tasted good, and they ate it up.
Right.
Something else happened to me. Hey, but that's not why I'm here.
Tell me why you're here.
I'm here really to read short pieces of things, short stories, because last year we read excerpts from larger pieces from novels. Actually, we actually read novels. So today, not today, but starting this year, we decided to read shorter things, and I'm going to get at it right now. This one is called. Oh, did you have a question or an answer?
No, I'm just looking forward to the reading. Okay.
This one is called the Senior Citizens Suicide Group.
Okay.
The Senior Citizen Suicide Group. Parts of it may sound like character sketches, but I'm writing it that way in order for you to get some sense of who these people look like or what they look like, rather than just simply, well, let me get at it.
Okay.
4 people committed suicide in the City Terrace Senior Citizen Facility yesterday. They were discovered dead as doornails by head nurse Mamie E. Williams. Not Williams, Williams. I noticed that they were unusually quiet in the TV rec room, but when I looked in during my first duty round, everything seemed to be okay. It wasn't until I made my second round, about 30 minutes later, that I became a bit suspicious. They seemed to be a little too quiet, especially with Mr. Jones sitting there, who was always rattling on about something or other. From the rear entrance, I could only see the back of their heads, and like I said, everything seemed to be okay. It wasn't until an hour later that I noticed something was wrong when I made my medication round. They all seemed to be asleep, something I'd never seen this particular group do, and I couldn't wake them up. Brief character sketches. Melvin Smith, 72 years old, white. What people have to keep in mind is that I haven't always been a 72-year-old white guy with pancreatic cancer. When I came out here from Chicago at the age of 12, I was full of piss and vinegar. Right from the beginning, I could see all kinds of possibilities. First off, it wasn't cold, like Chicago. I think that was the first thing that gave me the feeling that I could fly. My parents divorced about 2 years after we got here. Or should I be very frank and say my dad basically skipped out on us. Life had never been so easy for us, even with Dad back in Chicago. Now he's gone, for God's sake. And I'm the man of the family with 2 younger brothers, 2 younger sisters, and an alcoholic mother to take care of. So at the age of, yet most guys are thinking about dating, football, stuff like that, I was out hustling. I worked as a dishwasher in an Italian restaurant. Wonderful job, because I could take home all the leftover pizza crust I could carry. Giuseppe Rossetti was a wonderful boss. I worked as a janitor. I worked on the assembly line in the toy factory. I worked as a carpenter's helper. I did whatever I had to do to make an honest buck. By the time I was 15, I had left school and I was working full time. I look back at what I did and can hardly believe it. Mom died from cirrhosis when I was 20, and my sisters got married. I don't think either one of them had a successful marriage, but at least they were out of my hair. I got married to my first wife when I was 23 and started my own business as a professional custodian. Within 3 years, I had a pretty good business. I had 9 employees and things were going pretty well for me. My marriage crumbled because I didn't put enough effort into it. That's the honest to goodness truth. I was so busy taking care of the business, I simply forgot about Stella, my first wife. And she ran off with another man. I made myself a promise that I would never let that happen again. It took me about 2 years before I started going out again, before I met Charlene, my present wife. We've had a very successful marriage, I think. I think because we started off being good friends. Lots of people want to be lovers and let it go at that. I don't agree with that kind of logic. I think being good friends is the most important thing. Look at us now. I have terminal pancreatic cancer, and she has Alzheimer's. I'm not afraid to die, but I stay awake at night wondering what's going to happen to Charlene. That's the way good friends think about each other. Charlene knows that I have about 6 months to live, but there are times when she really doesn't know who I am. City Terrace is not the greatest senior citizen home in the world, but the people are decent and the food isn't too bad. We got a few crackpots running around, but basically the people here are pretty well balanced. Well, most of them, anyway. I think my own personal nut brain is this guy, JJ. He insists that we call him Mr. Jones. So I'll just call him Mr. Jones. He's always going on and on about how we should make a statement, about how we should make an impact on the young. Stuff like that. To be really honest with you, I've never really given any of this stuff a lot of thought. Never had time. My very own personal feelings about most of the young people I've had a close relationship with, my nephews, nieces, etc., are pretty much negative. I mean, like, some of them would say, how am I supposed to feel about some younger people who decided the best thing for me would be to put me in the senior citizen facility after they discovered that my pancreatic cancer was going to take me away? No, I can't say that I'm in love with young people. That would be sheer hypocrisy to say that I love them. After all, let's face it, as Mr. Jones put it, they're the ones who declared us old waste products of now. Charlene Spencer Smith, 66 years old, white. My name is, well, it'll come to me in a minute. I'm 5 feet 5 inches tall and I weigh 130 pounds, the same as I was when I was in college. Yeah, I think I did go to college. You have to be patient with me because there's this Alzheimer's stuff. I can't remember stuff the way I used to. There are days when I can remember a lot of stuff that I thought I had forgotten, like the names of our children. For the record, Mr. Melvin Smith and his second wife, Charlene Spencer Smith, have never had children. This place we live in is okay, I guess. But let's face it, I've never lived in a motel before, so what can I say? The thing I like most about the people who give us medicines and stuff like that is that they never try to force you to take anything you don't like. I had a crazy dream last night. I can't recall the details, but it was absolutely horrifying. I woke up screaming and found this strange man in bed with me. The strange man was Melvin Smith. Well, awfully waited nothing. What day is it? Is this Thursday or Friday? Well, it really doesn't matter. Most days are the same to me. Wasn't the tsunami horrible? That giant wave that killed all those people over there. I know, I have Alzheimer's. I know that. I don't have to have people constantly telling me, Charlene, you have Alzheimer's. I know that and I understand what it is, what it does to the mind. I don't need to have anyone remind me. I've heard a lot of stuff about Alzheimer's, most of it wrong. Alzheimer's, let me see. It's like being drunk in a very absent-minded way. The funny thing is that I don't feel drunk. Yesterday some people brought me back to the City Terrace Valley apartment because they said I was lost. How could they say I was lost? I wasn't lost. I just didn't know where I was going. Do most people know where they're going?
No.
Maybe our young people set up Alzheimer's zones first because they hate us so much. Why do they hate us? Because we're dinosaurs, ancient people. Reminds us of what they're destined to become, no doubt about it. I think they hate that realization, that possibility that they will eventually become us. So it's like a kind of advanced self-hatred when they hate us. They hate us for being out of tune with their values. What kind of values do you have when you can call your sister a bitch? I don't care how much money you make doing that. Weather is difficult for some people to deal with, but I love it. I love the snow. When I was a girl growing up in Wisconsin, this stuff was rap. I called it rape of the rhythmic process. How are you going to get to a Miles Davis, a Stan Getz, an Artie Shaw, a Thelonious Monk, a Billy Holiday, a June Christie, a Charlie Parker, a Duke, Count, King, Coltrane, Blakey, Cannonball, out of somebody whose greatest talent is shooting off his mouth. Cora Patricia Evans, 68 years old, hip attitude, egomaniac, multi-textured, deep-voiced. Lots of people don't want to believe that I'm as old as I am, but what does it matter anyway? What is age but a number? The important thing is not to be panicked. I think most folks, well, most men anyway, have a tendency to look at my figure rather than become involved with someone my age. I'm 5 feet 8 inches tall, good hair, beautifully curly hair, Creole light-skinned from New Orleans. Always been frisky all my life. I've gained a few pounds since my movie Extra Days, but I still manage to turn a few heads when I walk down the street. I don't feel any need to brag about anything, but I have to say, I've never met a man who didn't want me or could resist my charm. You know what I'm saying?
No.
Yes, I do wear short skirts, sweaters with plunging necklines, cleavage bulging out to here, makeup that makes my face look like a mask. I think that's another one of the reasons why they can't stand our guts. We got style. They don't have style. I remember when style was really style. That was during the time when we created our own style. Now it's the other way around. Nowadays they're just like clowns. Why can't they pull their trousers up? Somebody tell me that. Why can't they pull their trousers up? The girls just like third-class prostitutes on a rainy day. I don't really care what they think of me, those who still have enough brains to think. I don't know. Maybe I've become too young or too old, depending on how you want to see me. But that's neither here nor there. What gets on my last nerve is Mr. Jones, always ranting and raving. What's the deal with that man, anyway? Clarence T. Connolly, 65 years old, Negro, per his own designation. Negro suits me fine psychologically.
Okay.
I've always been the sort of person who believed in prayer. And after the praying was done, it was time to get off your knees and do something. Too many of us, and I know you know just who I mean, have been so seduced by this cult of victimization that we can't seem to do anything for ourselves. We've always got to have some government agency do it for us. The government doesn't owe us anything, not a damn thing, in my opinion. Sure, we were slaves once upon a time, and yes, we did make this country what it is, but that's all in the past, followed by a seriously exasperated black expression. We don't receive any benefit for crying over spilled milk.
No.
If I had been in that frame of mind, do you think I would have been selected to represent African American points of view on the court?
No.
On the court?
No. No.
I kept my mouth shut to avoid arguments about any pro-African American bias. I was the perfect N-word on the Supreme Court at that time. But it could have been Ginsburg. Why wasn't it Ginsburg? Well, she was too Jewish. They needed a strong twosome like me and I can't even recall his name after all these years. Oh yes, Scalia. But you have to understand, I needed Scalia. They thought I was Scalia's disciple, but I wasn't. I was angling for the top, for the Supreme Court chief spot.
Really?
Could you ever imagine an N-word person who thought rap was something you did on Christmas Day was going to become a Supreme Court justice or a cello or a chancellor or whatever they've chosen to call it?
No.
Couldn't really see that. Huh? Let's fast forward, no matter how backward people seem to think I am, to my personal experience as a validation of my opinions. Here I am, a 65 Negro man from deepest Georgia who took the unpopular bull by the horns and I've never let go. I was a Republican when Ike came into power.
There you go.
Affirmative actions, it must be said, opened all schools up to our end. I didn't depend on lowered standards to get to where I am. I relished the idea of academic competition. I took pride in being in the top percentile of all my classes.
Gotcha.
Mr. Clarence I. Connolly was at the low end of his class percentile, grade-wise, in parentheses. I understand that a lot of us just want to scrape by doing as little as possible. I think that's morally wrong. If I wanted to do that, I would have gone to Iraq. Sure, I could have had some string pulled when my National Guard unit was activated, but I didn't think it was the right thing to do. I felt that my president, my country, were calling on me to do my duty, and I felt compelled to answer that call. Iraq was no cakewalk, believe me. And I've got the psychological and physical wounds to prove it. They put me on trial for participating in what they call the murder of several Iraqi citizens. Hell, those guys weren't citizens. They were a bunch of cutthroat, raghead terrorists. It was either they or we, and I'm not ashamed to admit that I took them out. I saved the lives of the members of my unit, of my squad. That's what I did.
Repercussions.
That's what I did.
Okay.
How the hell was I supposed to know? They had little kids and women with them. They rolled up too close to the checkpoint and I opened fire. If you're a leader, you have to lead. Back then, under the circumstances, if you saw a bunch of old ragheads with a certain look about them, you were supposed to shoot first and ask questions later. That was SOP. For those who are not hip to military jargon, that means standard operating procedure. It's all been sanitized and brushed under the rug now, but early on when folks were being killed on a daily basis, if you saw a raghead who gave any indication of being an anti, you were supposed to shoot first and ask questions later. My friend Jones was over there. He knows how it was, what we had to endure to survive. That's one of the big reasons why I listen to what he has to say. He made it sound like a nut brain to a lot of these folks in here, but not to me. I understand exactly where he's coming from. Simplify. Oh, can't use that kind of. After all, I was in the Army National Guard, not the Marine Corps. Mr. James Johnson Jones, 65 years old, a megalomaniac, an intermediate mixture. Hell, I got so many different kinds of bloodlines running through my bloodlines, including Polynesian and Polish, I could be called anything anybody wanted to call me. Some folks say I'm crazy, straight up, I know that, but it don't bother me. My spin on it is this: I don't care what you think of me, it's what I think of you that count. You dig where I'm coming from? Fortunately, here at the City Terrace, I do have a few sensible people who see the light of my reason. Clarence is numero uno in my book. Well, he's the kind of guy who thinks real hard on the message, absorbs it, understands it. I like that about him.
This is good.
I hope I'm getting through to you.
Oh, most definitely.
Oh, all right. Don't give me that wonder look. I'm not talking to anybody personal. I'm just talking in general.
Gotcha.
Understand me clearly. I'm not talking serious as those people to these people for the past 2 years, but he's the only one who really and truly understands.
Yes.
Melvin and Charlene, well, they're partially in agreement with me about most of my ideas, or should I say, Melvin's in agreement. Most of the time, Charlotte is out to lunch, if you know what I mean. If we lived in a more honest time, we would have found a more honest way to deal with her problem. You dig where I'm coming from? If you don't, check out Mein Kampf.
Oh, Lord.
Good book by a guy named Adolf. Cora has days when she wants to believe that she's 18 years old again instead of her real age, which is 68. I checked.
No.
The last serious conversation we had convinced me that she's surely drifting around to my point of view. Frankly speaking, I don't think she has any choice. You dig where I'm coming from?
Okay.
Okay, Jim, I'm here. Now, what is it you want to talk about? Where's Charlene? She should be here in a few minutes, or she may not be here. What's the matter? What's on your mind? Suicide.
Oh.
Melvin Smith stared at Mr. Jones's mouth as though he were trying to figure out where the word had come from. Suicide?
Yeah.
Melvin, look, call it by any name you want to call it, but what I'm talking to you about is suicide. They muted their conversation to accommodate Mrs. Williams, making one of her round. Evening, Mr. Smith, Mr. Jones, how you boys doing this evening? They nodded politely with little even-handed smiles. It wasn't a good thing to make Nurse Williams suspicious or to piss her off about anything. She was there for them in all phases of the game. I'm here for y'all. Now don't try to bullshit me, okay? What you got to understand is this. I'm bullshit proof, and I take pride in that. Okay, run this at me again. What are you talking about? Suicide. Suicide. Explain yourself. That sounds like a radical position for me.
It is.
For whatever reason, anyway.
Yes.
Melvin Smith's wife, Charlene Spencer Smith, wandered onto the scene, the screened-in porch where Melvin, Charlene, Clarence, Corey, and Mr. Jones spent most of their warm weather days. Aha, Melvin, there you are. I thought you deserted me. Melvin smiled with pleasure. She had remembered their connection, and she had almost recalled that his name was Melvin. Mervyn was closer than Sydney. She was having a good day. Sometimes she called him Sydney, sometimes she called him.
Right, that's where it happened, House Street.
Mrs. Smith, glad you could join us. Have a seat. Suddenly, Charlene Spencer Smith panicked, realizing she was in the company of two men she didn't know, that she had no relationship to with. I don't want to sit down here with you, you monsters. All you do is talk evil all day long. Mr. Jones and Melvin Smith popped into an embarrassed mode. Mrs. Spencer Smith was always forcing people into an embarrassed mode. Miss Smith, I can assure you that we do not talk evil, as you put it, at any time. Well, okay. I was just wondering. Mr. Smith and Mr. Jones exchanged coded looks. It was not going to be easy to talk to each other with Miss Smith on the scene. They need not have any concern. Miss Smith made a few aimless moves and began to wander away.
Wow. Not in the right mind.
Charlene, dear, do you have to go to the potty? She stared at him with a look of fierce indignation. No, I don't have to go to the potty. What an absurd question to ask a grown woman. Don't you think I would know if I had to use the toilet or not? Mr. Jones covered his mouth to conceal a broad smile. Melvin Smith pursed his lips, his head held down, trying to ignore the streak of urine that trailed his wife as she wandered away from them. Mr. Jones slid back in obliquely, cramping his urge to laugh aloud. You see, that's one of the things I've been talking about. I think you're realistic enough to realize that you're not going to live forever. The doctors give me 6 months, Max. What's going to happen to your wife, to Charlene, after you're gone? Mr. Jones was surprised to see the sudden flush of tears roll down Melvin Smith's cheeks. Something I think about every day, every single day. She would be so alone here without me. What about your kids, your grandkids? We don't have any. Well, we don't have any that care enough about what happens to us. You think we'd be in this place if we had relatives to look out for us? Mr. Jones took careful notice of the bitter tone in Melvin Smith's voice. That's exactly what I've been talking about all this time, how much these young people hate us. What's that got to do with suicide? Mr. Jones edged a little closer as though he was sharing absolutely confidential information. Just dying is what is going to happen to us anyway. Committing suicide would make a statement. I don't want to just die. I want to make a statement. Melvin Smith stared at the urine trail left by his wife and released a fresh flow of tears. Yes, Mr. Jones, what is it you want to talk about? Mr. Jones took a couple of deep breaths to quickly acclimate himself to Cora Evans' heavy, cheap, extremely aromatic perfume and took a careful look at her, the lady herself. 68 years young.
Oh, yeah.
She often exclaimed, running her hands down each side of her ample hip line, puffing her cleavage up and tooting her booty out at the same time.
Yeah.
Catch your booty. Catch your booty.
Yes.
Got your booty. She still has a gorgeous shape, but she would really be beautiful if she took off the kitty miniskirt, the hoop earrings, and allowed herself to be the beautiful woman who's hiding behind that horrendous facade. Well, what are you going to do? Just sit there and stare at my gorgeous body all day long, or what? Well, come to think of it, that wouldn't be such a bad idea, would it? Mr. Jones could easily tell that he had punched Cora's sweet spot from the way she pursed her red lips out at him. She was a patsy for flattery. But aside from staring at your perfect figure and all, I saw your grandkids here earlier today. You got good eyesight, Mr. Jones. He decided not to antagonize her by making a smart-ass reply. He waited a few beats for her to continue. Yeah, they come for a visit with their sorry asses. What really pisses me off is the way they ignore you or pretend to pay you some attention. You know what I'm saying? Oh, yes, I do. Cora Evans was off on a familiar rant. He decided to give her the floor for a few minutes. They don't fool me. Not one damn bit. The main reason the little bastards come to check me out is to see whether or not I'm on my deathbed yet. I mean, who in the hell ever gave them the right to pass judgment on anything to say or know or do? We're the seniors, not them. What the hell do they know about life? Life for them is a half-hour sitcom, a video game, a hamburger, a bunch of bullshit. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. I'm glad somebody does. Here's Cherie, my youngest grandkid, says to me, Grandma, don't you think that dress is a little too short for you? How dare you say something like that to me? Mr. Jones pursed his lips and tried to look sympathetic. Whenever Cora Evans went on a rant, it was best to remain cool and wait it out. When I was growing up, we knew how to respect our elders. I can't begin to imagine what would have happened to me if I had to question my elders about any damn thing. Donald, my youngest grandson, okay? He got the nerve to ask me, Granny, don't you think you got a little bit too much lipstick on? What did you tell him, Mr. Jones shot in? I told him to kiss my ass. That's what I told him. Cora Evans stopped her rant and started crying hard, bitter tears. Now was the time. He took a step toward Cora Evans and opened his broad, muscular arms. They didn't call him the Tarzan of city terrorists for nothing.
Uh-oh.
Cora Evans folded herself inside of his arms and smeared his snow-white shirt front with a layer of pancake makeup, red lipstick, and skunk-strength perfume. He frowned over her clutching shoulder past the smell of the iron saffron, the ironed sulfur in her hair, and the lard like oil on the side of his face. Sister was obviously in need of a new ebony beauty consultant. We don't eat chitlins anymore. Or didn't she know that, makeup-wise? Cora, I know exactly how you feel. Please believe me, I do. You've worked your fingers to the bone to give these ungrateful whelps everything you've never had, excuse me. And look at what happens. The minute you give them a couple of health issues to deal with, they stick you away somewhere like the city terrorists. He fervently wished that he had a handkerchief to give her to prevent her from smearing his frequently washed white shirt, but he decided the sacrifice is worth it. He could feel her crusty exterior crumbling. I know a little bit about his story, Carl. You've scrubbed office floors, worked 2 or 3 low-paying jobs at one time to make sure everybody within your immediate family circle, and some beyond, had a grand Christmas, Easter baskets, birthday parties, and gifts, all the things you've never had, so why shouldn't you be a little pissed at them? He was shocked to hear her exclaim, I did it. I did it all because I wanted to. That's not what's bothering me. What's bothering me is the fact that I might die with some dirty underwear on. Mr. Jones slowly pushed Cora Evans' clinging body away from him, held her arm's length, looked deeply into her misty brown eyes. Cora, you don't have to die accidentally with dirty underwear on. I've been talking with you guys about all of this for almost 2 years now, okay? I hear you, Mr. Jones, I hear you, she murmured and sank back into his comforting arms. Clarence T. Connerly paused downwind of the embracing couple and detoured with a feral expression on his dark chocolate-skinned face. Clarence T. Connerly savagely stirred the sugar around in his coffee cup, waiting for Mr. Jones to join him for a tete-a-tete in the City Terrace cafeteria. He tried to ignore the hostile looks of the people who shuffled past his table. Kiss my ass. I don't care what you think of me, it's what I think of you that counts. The African Americans didn't like it because he had often made a point of letting everybody know that the late George Wallace, Strom Thurmond, and Jesse Helms were personal heroes. Personal heroes.
Gotcha.
What we have to remember is this. These guys were the first politicians in America to fight for the little guy, the common man. Were they racist? Well, who wasn't back then? Let's face it, nobody's perfect.
There you go.
The white people didn't like him because in association with him created the impression that they were harboring an Uncle Tom. There were 2 Asians, an ancient Japanese man and an ancient Chinese woman, who didn't seem to relate to anyone or each other. Clarence folded his arms on the table and stared at Mr. Jones's swaggering approach to his table. Look at him, he walks like he owns the place. Mr. Jones waved, nodded, smiled, and strolled to Clarence's table. He was obviously well liked. He pulled his chair out, leaned back in his arrogance, and stared at Clarence's petulant expression as though to say, well, I'm here. Now what? Thought you said we were meeting for coffee at 2 p.m., not 2:30. Had things to do, a couple of calls to make. You're always late, always got an excuse. Clarence, I'm not always late. And I don't always have to an excuse. Sometimes it's only an explanation, okay? Clarence was immediately charmed by the quick dimpled smile that Mr. Jones flashed across the table. As usual, Clarence was disarmed by his friend's warmth, his arrogant air. He decided not to make an issue out of his friend's tardiness. Couldn't help seeing you and the Evans woman in the rec room yesterday. Mr. Jones leaned toward him, his hands clasped together. My God, you talk about somebody with problem, with issue. That woman has problems. But I think I learned something very important from her yesterday. Clarence leaned forward eagerly. Mr. Jones had a way of talking that made most inconsequential matters seem important. Well, what? Sister Evans is deathly afraid of dying accidentally with underwear on that might not be absolutely clean. Clarence smiled. Well, that ain't nothing new. I bet generations of Negro women have been told the same thing. Don't go nowhere with dirty underwear on. You might have an accident. And what's the other one? Have cab fare when you go out with them, just in case. In any case, I discovered the reason she was or had been reluctant to join our cause. Because she was going to be caught with dirty underwear on. Mr. Jones stabbed Clarence with a hard look and ignored his attempt to be humorous. Yeah, that's the best explanation she could offer, aside from the fact that I had to remind her that she was not in a recovery mode, to put it mildly, and that there were very great possibilities with her terminal ailment that she was going to wind up flat on her back with wires running inside of every available vein and crevice, with a machine breathing for her. And she probably wouldn't have any panties on, dirty or otherwise. I left the choice up to her by asking, is that the way you want to go? Is that the way you want to go? I left the choice up to her by asking, is that the way you want to go? What did she say? What did she say? Mr. Jones paused dramatically to achieve maximum effect. She said she'd think real hard on what I was talking about. Real hard, and she would give me her answer by the end of the week. Clarence T. took Mr. Jones's right hand into both of his hands and pressed it to his forehead. "You're the master, Mrs. Jones, you're the master." Nurse Williams, strolling past the picture window frame in the cafeteria, frowned at the master servant scene. "Looks like I'm going to have to increase somebody's medication." Mr. Jones sprawled on the narrow bed in his room, his hands laced behind his head, thinking as he studied the cracks in the ceiling. Melvin and Charlene, they're ready. And besides, what does Charlene know anyway? The big maybe, Cora Evans, was right on the cusp, and of course Clarence T., the follower. He crossed and recrossed his legs, excited by the idea of taking a few souls out with him. What the hell? Why shouldn't it be hundreds? The thought jarred him into a sitting position for a few souls with him. What the hell? Why shouldn't it be hundreds? The thought jarred him into a sitting position for a few months. Nah, not hundreds. That would take too long to convince a few hundred people to go on my trip. For going with me, that would make a statement. He settled back, folded his hands across his chest, and slowly recited his suicide manifesto note. "We have decided to commit suicide for the following reasons. Number one, we hate the way the world is today. We couldn't imagine that any reasonable human being would want to live in a world that is dominated by poverty, hunger, fear, anger, pain, and uncivilized behavior. All of us have health problems that could be sustained, indeed nurtured by all of the latest pills. Doctors are not healers, they're pharmaceutical puppets, unfortunately. But we've chosen not to live our lives in that cosmetic fashion. That would be a sort of a humanoid behavior, inhumanoid behavior. Each of us is terminally sick, which means in most of the states of these United States that we will be kept alive by any means necessary if we had not decided to take matters into our own hands. Please, no applause. Why should we be given excessive credit for doing what any sensible, reasonable senior citizen with insurmountable health problems would do, could do? There are folks who would say that we're being mean-spirited, vindictive in a sense, because the way we've chosen to go will deny many of our relatives the money that they wouldn't have received from the insurance companies. To some of them, this will be the ultimate insult. The ultimate insult to them is that we've made a deliberate choice of circumstances, not to have them benefit from our timely death. Well, that's too bad. Mr. Jones hugged himself, chuckling at the thought of how much anger he was going to cause amongst the remaining family members of the City Terrace Senior Citizen faculty. Yeah, that's what they call themselves, the Senior Citizen side. Oh, the City Terrace Senior Citizen Suicide Group. He nodded off for a few minutes, exhilarated by the idea of committing suicide and having others join him. Age, that was something that was going to destined to happen if you lived long enough. What the hell was it about age that freaked Americans out so badly? Maybe it has something to do with the country being so young. After all, 300 years is a relatively baby age in comparison to a whole lot of other countries, including Iraq. He squeezed his eyes tighter, recalling the sand lizards he had experienced in Iraq. Damn, who in the hell would want to live in a place like that? Iraqis. He answered his own question and rolled off on his left side to stare out of the only window in his apartment. Amazing, we had a president and most of his administration lied to us to support a war that was unnecessary and virtually unwinnable, and we bought the whole bag of nuts. The Iraqi invasion was primarily about securing the second largest oil deposit on earth after our ally Saudi Arabia, but no one could say that after the invasion. All kinds of oblique reasons were offered. We're knocking Saddam Hussein and his brutal regime out of the box. We're going to give you guys democracy. It may be at that point of the rifle now, but you'll get the hang of it after 100 years or so. Oh, didn't mean that.
No.
Iraqi swam in front of his consciousness, merging with the fleecy clouds storming in front of his bedroom window. Incredible place, Iraq. A cradle of civilization with a madman in charge, Saddam. We gave war profiteers. Can anybody think of a better name for the Cheney scheme? An opportunity to play the place up and friends of the vice president to rebuild it. Spyro Agnew and his Maryland games have to be considered small in comparison. And chaining nepotism, well, yeah, if you are the regime, very clever. He smiled conquering, he's shivering. What are these bureaucrats doing, the ones who write unreadable reports, these brilliant assholes? What are they going to write about us, the City Terror Senior Citizen Suicide Group? Yeah, get with that. You media people are so full of government-infested propaganda ethics by now that you might describe our protest suicides as an aberrant thing. What would happen if a dozen other suicides, a dozen other senior citizens decided to pull the plug? The thought caused him to laugh out loud. Gotta be careful. Can't tip them off about what's about to happen. But I'm pretty certain they're going to be surprised at who we are. The Alzheimer couple? No. Corey Evans? No. Clarence C. Connolly, too involved with his own agenda? No. James Johnson Jones. Okay, now, Mr. Jones, let's not create any problems, okay? Billiams, the super sharp ward nurse, Louise Fletcher, doing her Nurse Ratched, doing her ward thing with a handful of locals was a tough nut to crack. Williams, there was really no contest. After all, I'm going to save it until we come back tomorrow night.
Okay. All right. So we're still in the old folks' home. All right.
I'm going to save the rest till tomorrow night.
Gotcha.
To see whether or not they commit suicide or not.
Yes, fair enough. Definitely. Part 1, Senior Citizen Suicide.
Senior Citizens Suicide Group.
All right. Thank you, Odie Hawkins. Your website is www.odiehawkins.com. And we look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow. If you tomorrow night. If you like the video, please hit the like button.
Had you go in there for a minute, didn't I? Had you go in there for a minute.
Yes, you did. You certainly did. You was very dramatic reading. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yes.